I got to start with this, Chris. First of all, you have an executive assistant. I'm very impressed. I knew you.
Yes.
It was simply just artist Twyman saying, "Man, real quick, couple quick ones, Chris." Look at you now. And then they said, "What are you going to ask him? What are the questions and the topics?" And I was like, "I don't even know. I just kind of want to catch up." So I'm not sure where this will go, and I've wondered for you as a host, even how often do you not script, but how much do you have bullet points? How much you just kind of like to wing it?
It depends on who I'm talking to. I think there's different kind of interviews. Like if you and I are talking, obviously we know each other. There's some familiarity. That might be more on the wing it scale. And then, like we just had Ken Burns on, and that was a lot of fun. I had him on for the country documentary he did last summer, and it's great. Like so is the Muhammad Ali documentary that we talked about at length the other day. But I do have like a little bit of bucketing. Like these are things I'd love to hit. And if you learn anything as an interviewer, I guess, and you might identify with this is like, yeah, you got a plan, but things go out the window. So as long as you have these waypoints and like, hey, when we get to talking about this, there's something that really interests me as a sidebar. If I can remember to do that, it's right there in the bucket. Glance at the bucket and find a way to weave it in. But generally, interviews kind of go where they're supposed to go, in my opinion, just like a conversation.
Yeah, you're going to have ideas of what you want to bring up, but then if the guest says, "And that's when I murdered my neighbor," and you go, "Yeah, yeah. Well, anyway, about this week's game," you're like, "Oh,
Exactly. Yeah, you should have stopped there. And I did some of that early in my career. Like I think interviewing's a really hard thing. I don't know what's harder, like doing monologues about sports or whatever else, or actually getting in the arena and interviewing something. I think I probably started a lot faster being competitive as an interviewer than I did the other thing. I think there's a lot more finding your voice on that thing. But I made a lot of mistakes early, and I'm still making them. And then that's why you do a ton of them and you learn. It's like anything else. It's like playing football.
and when did you know?" I mean, I remember we talked to you, I think it was early on with Twitter, even. You were having fun with it, and we probably did
Yeah.
some interviews at Rams Park about your social media presence. Did you think then, "Hey, I'm going to kind of venture into the media world in some fashion"?
No, I mean, like, honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do back then. When I was doing that, I didn't know what the hell life was supposed to look like after football. And honestly, it probably confused me and scared me a little bit at that point because I was so enthralled in what I was doing. Twitter was always like an escape. Like when I'm sitting at home and I'm bored and I just want somebody to talk to about some BS or the game that's on. Back then, it was a room where you knew people and that sort of thing. And it got too big. Like, and honestly, it got to the point where anything I said was getting picked up because all of a sudden I was playing for a team with like a big national profile. Like we had a strong profile in St. Louis, but our team was struggling. And, the market wasn't the size of a Philly or a Boston. So when I'd go make that benign tweet in, on Twitter in St. Louis, I never thought the score would pick it up. And I was twice the player I wasn't, than when I was in Philly or in New England, but I learned a hard lesson and I'm not mad about it, but like Twitter kind of just got too big and I got like everything I kept saying got picked up and I just got tired of it. I don't like it right now. I kind of just do it just to post my podcast and stay engaged and talk to a few people, but that thing got too big, man.
So we're in the Green Light Studios now. Is this part of the Chalk Media umbrella? Walk me through this and give me a little insight into the naming.
So basically this is the Green Light Studio. We call it Studio J. It is we just got wallpaper, which is great. It's been a gray wall for a long time. This is your tight shot here. The two shot, as we know it in the business, is me and my trusty co-host, Macon Gunner, who I grew up with. And this is 10 minutes from my house. And honestly, to answer your last question a little bit better, I knew towards the end that I wanted to do media, but I don't. There's the two shot for you. Oh no, I wanted to do media, but I didn't want to leave my hometown. Like I don't want to with regularity have to go to LA. Like my dad growing up had to when he retired because he needed the money. They didn't make the money we made. He'd get on a plane and go to LA every week like clockwork on the weekends, red eye on the way back, trying to catch our games on Fridays and Saturdays. And that was tough for him. I mean, like, it's like he's not complaining about making money to talk about football, but it's a strain on the, I can imagine me being a dad right now, having to get on a plane and leave for even a night a week. I couldn't do it. Like, no chance. That was a lot of the reason why we waited to have kids till after. So to allow me to center myself here and kind of work how I want to work, I thought podcasting, it gives me the most freedom and it gives me the most like creative freedom too. And it doesn't hurt that my studio is right here, 10 minutes from my house, and I got an awesome team here. We got great producers, a co-host who I've known for a long time, and it's fun. We're figuring it out, and we've definitely done it on our own because we've been indie for the most part until we got with Blue Wire.
So you don't see yourself ever being a game analyst or in the studio. You don't see that?
Now listen, if those things ever became like a Zoom thing, uh I could see, I've done some live streaming of games. I enjoy sitting there breaking down a game. Like when I'm at home talking about a game, you know, I've I'm not saying this naively. I feel like I have the knowledge to maybe be able to do it, but there's a whole skill set, that you have to learn beyond just, hey, I know what's happening on that player. I can call out what's going to happen ahead of time. Like Tony Romo at home on defense. That doesn't matter if you can't handle somebody in your ear, if you can't handle all the moving parts, if you can't handle knowing when to get in, when to get out. So I think sometimes players we think, oh, I could do that, and maybe we couldn't, maybe we could. I just don't think I'm gonna find out. I really don't. I do some fun stuff with Amazon because it's Zoom and it's Thursday night, and I like my weekends. If that ever goes somewhere, you never know. But if I learn anything, never say never. Probably not, though.
So I did the Rams preseason games for a number of years, and we would always have a former player, and I was pretty tight with Ricky Prohl. And the first year they bring him in, and he's like, "Hey, Martin, how does it work?" And I said, "Well, there's this, there's that, but you can't teach somebody that they're going to talk in your ear while you're talking."
Yeah.
And so we're doing a game in like Kansas City, and we're in the middle of a thought, and then somebody gets injured, so they immediately like, "Oh, now that's our chance to get in some spots." They're like, "Commercial, commercial, 3, 2," and then Ricky's like, "You know what happened on that X route?"
No.
I'm like, "What's that? Commercial? Commercial?" And I was like,
Ah.
and I go, "Dude," I go, "You're like a parrot. You can't just say it."
Oh.
So, but that's a
That's
whole
the
nother
that's the
topic.
I'm Ron Burgundy teleprompter situation.
I've given him shit for years about that because he was also our Rams pregame analyst on. We would be at that Bear Plaza across the street from games, and in 2006 he's retired. So
Yeah.
the Rams paid him to fly in. He'd do like corporate stuff, whatever. But from 10:30 at 11, he was my co-host. So there was a Sunday in like October or late, mid-season or something. And I swear to God, it was a Sunday morning. He texted me or called me and said, "Hey, Martin, I forgot to tell you, I'm not going to be there." I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "I signed with the Colts." And I'm like, "What? When?" And he's like, "Dude, Peyton Manning freaking called me." And I was like, "No, you have to say yes. Just maybe give me a little heads."
Like, I get it because I forget things all the time. And maybe if Peyton Manning calls you, you lapse into a bout of amnesia. Or, yeah, I feel bad for you, man. That was a tough scramble, probably.
I think the photographer who had always had these hot Rams takes, we just put him on the set or something. But
Okay, good.
who are you chasing? Like, who have you tried to get on? And sometimes the big names suck as a guest, so that's not
Yeah,
always the prize. But what about a
yeah,
couple that you could really, like you and Ryan Fitzpatrick? I listened to that. I was cutting the lawn. I'm like, I could have listened all day. I mean, you guys are obviously people
yeah.
who know
Thank
each
you.
other. Plus, he's a good guest and he's fun.
Yeah. He is a good guest, man. Honestly, the people that I most like covet talking to would be non-football people. Like the football people excite me, but when you play football for an NFL team, for the most part, even though you have more freedom to say what you want now than maybe when I got in the league or whatever, it's still you're kind of muzzled a little bit. You can't talk about certain things, especially in season. Um, Listen, I got when it came to football, I was really excited to talk to like Ricky Williams. He was awesome. I mean, there was so many things to talk about with Ricky, and Ricky also was generous and gave me almost 90 minutes. And I think would have given me more. I talked to Paul Nicklin the other week to give you an example of somebody outside football that I've really enjoyed talking to. He's a National Geographic photographer. And Martin, like the stories that he tells, and actually this is going to air next Wednesday are some of the most badass stories I've ever heard. Like a guy jumping in a pool of orcas out in the middle of the night in wherever they live, and they're feeding. and he's under sheets of ice, scuba diving and stuff. Like he got attacked by an elephant seal. Guy's a total badass. Like, why would I want to talk about football? You know what I mean? When I can talk to Paul Nicklin, or I would love to talk to Chris Stapleton. Like, he'd be one of my main, like, if I could get him on the show, that'd be awesome. We just did, we had Ken Burns on the other day. So I want to go everywhere, man. Like, that's what I'm interested in. And the great thing about a podcast where you start out indie to me is like I don't answer to anybody saying I didn't sign up for this. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a Barstool Sports fan and they start pushing my content and I'm interviewing a violinist or some shit, like, that I'll get a bunch of complaints, or, hey, Chris, they do mailbag too much, or they do this. Like, I don't care. I don't really care. Like, I care. I want the podcast to be successful, but what I'd rather have is like this group of listeners that we've kind of eliminated people who aren't into XYZ over time. Like, it's selective, it's self-selective, and eventually if we actually get really successful, there are people that really like our stuff, and I can kind of do what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you get to every once in a while when you do want to do football, throwing your dad on. I just love seeing you guys riff because I'm sure there's probably some famous football
Yeah.
dads who were just kind of dicks and like just good
Probably.
and weren't like. In fact, former Ram Keith Lyle used to tell me his dad played for the Bears. He's like, "Oh man, my dad was an asshole." I mean, he would say that. He would tell me these stories, and he's like, "Man, I'm not going to be like that at all." And they're busy, they're successful, but you guys seem to have this incredible relationship where he's your dad, but
Yeah.
I feel like you guys would, like, on a Friday go shoot pool or something and just hang out.
We do a lot of hanging out, like he lives 5 minutes from me, so he's the best grandfather in the world, and he's a great friend to me. I mean, he's a great dad, but he's also a great friend to me. And so, um, that's the way I'd want it to be with me and, my two kids, Waylon and Luke. When they get older, I'd love to be one of those things where come over to my dad's house to drop something off. I'm going to hang out for 30 minutes. Like, I'm not, in and out. Because I love my dad, and he's cool. He's been through what I've been through, and then some, and he always was supportive of me as a player, and always like kind of could empathize with what I was going through. Maybe not ever like 2-14 or 1-15, but like, he got it. He got what a bad day of work was, and I had a lot of low points playing ball, as any NFL player does over 11 years, but every time he was there, and not just like, hey, great game. Like, I could trust him. You know what I mean? Like, and I could trust that he wasn't going to BS me. He's not a bullshitter. So, he's a great friend. And, after football, we've even gotten tighter.
I don't see him. I guess I don't know. Man, I've interviewed him a handful of times. He's great, but maybe I don't see him ever being outspoken politically or on social issues. Does he ever say to you, Chris, son, stay in line, or watch?
No,
Early on, did he ever
no.
say like, watch yourself, you're going to get burned, or?
No, I think, and I don't major in that stuff either. I think a lot of people, because here's how it works. If there's two guys in the NFL who say anything, like those two guys, people are going to go to the well for quotes there. And me as a guy that was just using Twitter messing around in 2010. I'm the same guy now. When something comes up, I talk about it. Like, I can remember in 2000, whatever it was, 11, 12, 10, I don't know, tweeting about Trayvon Martin and that sort of thing. Like, that didn't change me. Everything that most fans know about me, I was tweeting about things that I cared about, whether it was baseball, basketball, football, a movie, a social issue. Like, I've always tweeted about whatever. Now the only difference is I don't tweet about much of anything, especially not that stuff, because what I've realized is this very imperfect forum to like reach anybody or even have an intelligent discussion. So, like, I have no regrets in talking about that stuff. I'm true to pretty much everything I've said. Like, my mind changes like anybody, but I'm about what I've talked about, but I just don't feel like talking about it on Twitter anymore. Um, and that's the only time I really feel like I've gotten in trouble, and not even on trouble, but misunderstood. Somebody pulls a quote out of context. Somebody puts you on on a graphic with bold letters saying something and making you look like you think you're being heroic and some shit like that. Like, I'm just more sharing my opinion. And my dad's never had an issue like that because I think this is a new territory for guys from that generation. Like, they didn't have social media in the 80s. They didn't have social media in the 90s. They didn't, like, the only time you heard from them was when there were microphones in their faces. So who knows what those guys would have talked about? I don't think the generation's much different. I just think the access to having a voice is different. If they'd have had a voice, those characters would have used it. So it's just changing times a little bit with technology and the media.
How many times in St. Louis did you say, God, I didn't think the NFL is going to be like this? I mean, teams are going to have
Yeah.
down years, but when you were here, it was historically bad for a stretch. And I mean, not to give you PTSD, but I mean,
It's already there.
how tough was that as a player, though? Because you still got to go to practice. There's still a game on the schedule, and even if you got your teeth kicked in, you're still going to be out there running around in the backfield. And
Yeah.
how hard was it?
And I always say this framed in the context of, like, listen, a fan from St. Louis who's supporting a family and punching the clock, working 60-hour weeks or 80-hour weeks, and they don't want to hear like, man, that was tough. But everything's relative. Like, certainly I had a roof over my head and I was lucky and I was thankful. And of course we had great fans. And a lot of those people are the people I'm talking about that would spend their hard-earned money to come watch us play. So, like, I'm about to complain, but I'm not saying that I had it bad.
I am taking this shit out of context. Don't worry, I can't wait.
In football terms, we had it bad. Like, listen, I was a high pick. I got paid a lot of money, but if you give a fuck, it's torturous to lose. And I cared a lot about it. Guys on that team cared a lot about it. Guys on those teams cared a lot about it. Sure, you had some veterans sometimes that might be on their way out, that are kind of like, hey, I'll snag a check or two more. And especially in the old NFL, like, you had more older guys. But by and large on my team, like, those vets weren't okay with that. Like, those guys, some of my mentors, James Hall, Leonard Little, Fred Robbins, guys like that, those guys, it hurt me to watch them lose in their final couple years. Like a James Hall who comes from Detroit, who's got a ton of sacks. He's a good player. He's an underrated player. And he's got to spend his whole career in Detroit and now in St. Louis. And we're like really bad. And that sucked. And I can remember one time being like, and James and I laugh about this now, but we were out drinking one night after the season. I think it was our end of the year party. And I was like, Jay Hall, I love you, man, but I don't want to be like you when I get older. And it wasn't his fault. It was just he had bad luck. And when you're a football player, it's the ultimate team sport. You can't change, unless you're a quarterback, you can't really change the fortune of your team. Like, it's kind of unrealistic. And so, there was a lot of pressure as a draft pick, but also I just hated losing. And I hated every Sunday getting up there and having to say, my bad, to y'all and to fans, when, shoot, I could play as well as I wanted. It's a team game and we all struggled through it together. And so I'm very thankful for the time because I was just thinking about this actually, like, the Philly thing. Philly kind of adopted me when there was no place to go back to when the Rams left. And it was like, I felt like I was at home, but I never forget the other home too. I mean, the other home I have is St. Louis, and very different places, very different football experiences. But like, I'm just so thankful that I not just had Philly as a soft landing to finish, but also St. Louis to support through years where a lot of other cities, they wouldn't like you anymore, just for being on those teams. And I think St. Louis fans were like, you're all right with me because you leave it out there.
And we always talk about Cardinal fans love, when somebody bunts or moves the runner over, or, I think you're an example, though, of the football fan here getting what hard work is, even if the team doesn't win, that somebody, left it all on the field. I think they always knew that about you. And then the other element, I think, is I don't know how many Monday nights or Tuesdays I was somewhere and you guys had a fundraiser or, charity waiters or whatever, and you and Laurinaitis are there, and it sucks because you lost the game, but boy, you still showed up Monday. But I mean, I think people remember that stuff, and you come back to a Blues game now, they flip and love it. Nobody's like, oh, they went 3-13 that one year. They're like, holy crap, it's Chris Long. And I just think it's so cool because it wasn't your fault. The team wasn't better. And like,
Well, if I was Matt Ryan, maybe the team was better. Like, if we're being honest, like, so the only thing I ever feel bad about is like, hey, was I overdrafted by 10 spots? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, like, definitely overdrafted, but, you know, if you guys pick Matt Ryan, maybe you win a little bit more. But I really do think things were so bad there. It didn't matter. Maybe things are a little bit better if you pick somebody else, but that was the only part of it that I ever felt like, a little bit responsible for, as a unit. And then I felt really bad when I was hurt at the end. You know what I mean? Like, because we had worked so hard, like so hard to get over the hump. We go up to Seattle, Martin. You remember this? Like, we never beat Seattle up there. I think I was like 0-8 in my going, or 0-7 going into my 8th year in Seattle, and 0-7 going into my 8th year in San Francisco, which is incredible. And I remember, I was coming off that injury, which was bad luck, and I got hurt again, and now I'm coming back, and I'm not supposed to play. And I'm just struggling. The writing's on the wall, and we're beating these teams. And I'm like, damn, dude, like I'm living in the hotel in Clayton, getting ready to get cut probably. And that sucked. That part of it sucked. But everything else, I'm very proud of what we did, even though we weren't very good because of what you said. Because when I go back to St. Louis, I can feel like acceptance of, hey, that was good enough for me. You busted your ass, and that's all that matters to me. It really is. And I made a lot of special relationships and friends in St. Louis that are really near and dear to my heart. And I wish there was a stadium there to go back and watch football in.
well, I remember the Chris Long line in Seattle, 2015. I think it was like the day after Christmas or something. That you guys finally beat the Seahawks, and I said, "Hey, if you win next Sunday against the Niners, I go, you're going to be 8-8." And you just kind of look and go, "Well, do we get a parade or something?" Because but I was thinking, "Hey, that's something," and it didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, the parade happened eventually. Man, that was tough. It was tough for James. James made 1,000 tackles, gave his body up, and said, because they ran the ball a lot. Other teams ran the ball a lot. 8 years in St. Louis during that time period is a little bit longer in dog years in other places.
But and then when they cut you, did you feel disappointed you didn't get to go to LA, or part of you? I mean, I've said it to you before. I think your link here is even stronger because, well, you didn't go to LA. You weren't part of that.
No, I felt like probably for me in a football sense, if I'd have come back the next year in any capacity, I would have felt too guilty about it, man. Like, to be honest, because I had been hurt 2 years in a row, and we were on the back end of my second contract, and I just felt bad about being paid that money and being hurt, which, I couldn't control that. It was 2 plays, but you still feel like an asshole walking around the building. And so for me, if I was going to come back my 9th year, the pressure of like, what if I roll my ankle? Like, it's just going to get ugly. I think I needed a fresh start probably, especially because of LA. Now, if St. Louis was in the picture, I would want to be a Ram my entire career. Like, that would have been very special to me. But with the context of everything that was going on in the team movement, I kind of understood that it was going to happen. And I was sad about it. I was really bummed because there was even talks about that new stadium, and I was doing the math. It was like, man, they're going to do an outdoor stadium down by the river. It's going to be like 2019 or 20 or whatever it was going to be. I don't remember the year, but I was like, I wonder if I'll still be playing. Like, I would love it if I could still be playing. And it just didn't happen, and that's all good. And I don't hate the LA Rams. Like, I hate that it happened. I don't hate the players on that team. I don't watch games, and I'm like, and I get why some fans do. But the first couple years they were there, a lot of my very close friends were there. And I even considered at one point, like in free agency, LA and my big list of teams, which, if that happened, it was going to be pretty weird for me. And I'm kind of glad it didn't for obvious reasons.
It's so funny. I'm around Isaac Bruce a fair amount, and Torrey Holt. These guys like, Martin, let it go, let it go. And I go, no. I don't have to let it go. You guys should. You guys are Rams for life.
Yeah, like those guys going over there. It's nice seeing Isaac and Pisa and those
Yeah.
guys and Orlando there. And I hope fans know that, like, to a man, I'm pretty sure these guys are all like, St. Louis is an extremely special place. It's just when you're gone, like, especially if you're a one team guy, like some of these guys like Isaac Bruce, you know, where do you go? You know, you can't just not go to Rams games. So I feel for him, man.
No, it's totally fine. They should like
Yeah.
I have the players. They bring you back at halftime. The fans love you. Absolutely. I mean, we did the same thing here. I mean, it would be
Cardinals,
remember
yeah.
Rick Smith, the old PR guy. Was he gone when you were there? I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, I remember Rick. Yeah.
He would come up into the press box. He'd be like, "Hey, Martin, I don't know what you got going on at halftime, but I got Tom Mack over here," and I would have to Google him, like, because he was an LA Ram, and
Oh
they
yeah,
bring him
yeah.
back to St. Louis. So
Oh,
you,
the LA Rams. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that
that's tough. That's tough. You know, LA was on the other side of it, but you know, it's just not quite the same the way it went down. And I know there's a bitter taste in people's mouths. And hopefully one day there's a team. I just hope I'm around for it, dude.
and then you win 2 Super Bowls at the end. You had to think after that, like, not only maybe the first one was when it hit you, like, "Are you kidding me?" After everything, and then you do it twice, and there's no way I could have told Chris Long in 2015 that he's gonna end up with and it's sitting over your shoulder, got a couple of Lombardis. There's no way you would
Yeah.
have believed that.
No chance. I had given up. I really had given up. The second time I got hurt, I was just like, screw this. Like this is just I was thinking to myself, like, well, it's kind of karma. Like I was drafted high, you know, I had some really good years. Like you can't have it all, you know? And and that's the reality of football. But no, I got lucky. I picked the right teams, man. I remember I was in the hospital and my son Waylon was born, and I had a lot of time just sitting around sitting at the hospital thinking, do I want to keep playing? And later that week I got a call from Bill Belichick. It was actually my old D line coach, Brendan Daly, who was in St. Louis in the Spags era, had reached out to me like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, I hear you're retiring. Like, what the hell are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, not necessarily retiring. I mean, I see the New England area code." Like, he's like, "Well, you should talk to Bill." Like, and so then I was like, "Yeah, well, have him call me." And Bill called me 3 days later. I was in the supermarket. I had to run to the front because I didn't have service. And you know, we had one little conversation. I was like, man, I'd really like to go play there. But remember, they had Chandler Jones and Jabal. Well, they had Chandler, Jabal Sheard, Ninko, all these guys. Because at this point, I'm like, the only reason to keep playing is win. And I was openly ring chasing, which is different in football than basketball. Well, Chandler Jones got in trouble and they cut him or traded him to Arizona. And later that day, I was like, okay, I see a little opening. You know, let me try to make this happen. And the rest was history because I'll tell you what, a few things could have happened. I could have signed with the Cowboys. Actually, I was on my way to Dallas. I was in the airport when I signed with the Pats. That was what happened. The Chandler Jones thing happened when I'm on in the car to the airport. I could have signed with the Cowboys. That would have sucked. I could have signed with the Falcons. I would have been a part of a team that blew a 28-3 lead. There's no way I would have gone to Philly to play. This thing could have gone a million different ways for me. I just was so lucky, man.
Well, Chris, I know you got other stuff going on. You're a busy media mogul these days. I'm gonna let you run and
Man,
do it
come on
again
now.
down the road. And I just when I have someone like you on, I don't want to waste my time to, hey, who do you like in the points this week? You know, how's that front seven looking? And
Who do you like?
what's that?
Who do you like this week, Martin?
Yeah, like, oh, well, let's see. Let's look at some of the numbers. I don't even know who the fuck's playing. I don't.
Exactly. It's too early to look at the board, man, unless you feel
Oh,
great about something. Bets are supposed to be made drunk on Friday night or Saturday night, preferably Saturday night.
and that's why Fish took us to Seattle and San Francisco on Fridays. We have this running bit on radio. My guy Charlie and I would always do. We would say the schedule came out, and I love Fish, but he
Yeah.
would say like, "Well, looks like the Seattle game is mid-November. We should probably head out on a Wednesday." And we're like,
Ah.
and if it's Phoenix, we'd be like, "What if the Phoenix game in October?" Like, the guys would probably enjoy Scottsdale. We should go Tuesday.
Oh, he was so good about it. Oh, he
I
was
had
so
a
good
tweet
about it.
exchange with you about it. Said best travel coach ever.
Best travel coach of all time. I loved getting a good night's sleep and being in a nice hotel in the warm air. He got it. He got it.
All right, man. Hey, thanks so much.
Hey, thank you, bro. It's great to see you.